What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Daily Dime. Just myself today. Our guy Zach is traveling, so safe travels to Zach, and hopefully we all have a great holiday week here. We have a great NBA slate today, probably the last great NBA slate for a few days at least. No basketball tomorrow, so let's take full advantage. And of course, we get the overlap between a really nice NBA slate and an NFL game tonight. Although tonight's NFL game is one of the worst island games that I can ever remember. It's even worse, by the way, than like a really crappy game between two really bad teams, because at least with two really bad teams, anything can happen in the game. When you have a very good team playing against one of the worst teams fielded in NFL history, like this current Saints offense especially is, it's not a whole lot of fun. So we might still be able to find some picks from that game, but we will certainly be able to find some picks here in the NBA. I don't have any input yet from Zach on the day. Let me see if they have finally added some stock stuff yet. It doesn't look like it. So they've been slower the last few days. It's like they knew that we were delaying the show half an hour so we could take even more advantage of the stocks props and said, okay, we can't give them that. But we do have some stuff that I already like, and then a bunch of stuff I can talk through. I'm not sure we're going to have an actual 3-pick play to play after just this show, but we will definitely kind of have a bunch of stuff in mind and one pick that I know that I want to use. And so let's start there. Steph Curry assists. And did they momentarily take this down? It looks like I need to refresh this. So we have Steph projected. Okay, good. It has not moved. 5.5 assists still at 0.93x. We can also boost this if we'd like to 6.5 assists over at 1.24x. That's probably going to be my preferred route here. So a couple things on this. Number one, we have Steph projected at 7.49 assists. Now, we are currently projecting Draymond Green out. I don't know exactly how far the Steph assist projection is going to fall if we bring Draymond into the projections, but personally, I don't think it's really that affected. So a couple things to note here. First, this line is as low as it is because Underdog, the sports books, whomever you want to blame for actually setting these lines, they are concerned with the addition of Dennis Schroeder. Steph has now played 2 games with Schroeder. His potential assists have not taken a hit. He had 1 assist in that first game, although they got blown the F out. It was the worst Warriors performance in a long time. I don't like to take too much stock into that sort of thing. They came back the next game. Steph Curry, 10 assists. Now, he only had 12 potential assists, so the fact that he got to 10 assists was kind of an underdog story, if you will. When you get 12 potential assists, you're probably usually looking at an expectation of 7.5 to 8.5 assists, something along those lines. So did outperform the expectations in that regard, but the point is the potential assists were there. In fact, they were a little bit higher than what his season average has been. That game, there was no Draymond Green. It was just he and Schroeder, but I think it's also important to note that we actually have Schroeder projected slightly ahead of his line as well. We've got Schroeder at about 5.8 versus his 5.0 assist line. So the reason Steph is way ahead here is not because we just think that he's going to be way more involved than Dennis Schroeder. There's room for both to have a big role in the offense. But mostly this is just my thought of, you know what? The ball is always going to find Steph Curry, right? Whether he's the one starting and initiating the offense or whether they're starting and initiating from somebody else to get the ball to Steph, the idea is always to get the ball in Steph Curry's hands. And he's a great passer, a willing passer. So I think the assist should always be there for him. And along those lines, like I think there's also an element here of just the line not reflecting the minutes and just his typical production. So let's take a look. On the season, he's averaging 6.5 assists per game, not 5.5, 6.5 assists per game in 30.8 minutes. We know that Steve Kerr has taken a very conservative approach with minutes. The first 4 games of the season, he was at 27 or below. He has been held between like 29 and 32 a bunch, but in the last 7 games, 34, 32, 35, 34, 35, 24 when they lost by literally 50 to Memphis, and then 34 against Minnesota in their last game. That includes some non-cup games, right? So like there was initially a thought of, oh man, maybe they're just giving him these extra minutes for the cup, really going after that. But no, it seems like his new baseline for the regular season should be around 34 instead of the 30.8 that his season average, 6.5 assists is at. So we should be projecting him around 7 in a neutral matchup. Now we get a good pace-up matchup with this Indiana Pacers team. So I think this is just a fantastic play. I think this is higher than 50% likely to hit. I think it's probably around 55 to 60%. And we're getting this really strong 1.24x boost. So the Steph Curry assists is going to be kind of the center point of what I like tonight. And then we actually have a number of places that we can go from there. We have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander projected for around 34 points tonight. And I actually brought his minutes slightly down to reflect the blowout potential here. And we still have him at 34.8 relative to this 30.5 points line. Now, a couple options here as well. I am still a little bit worried about blowout in this situation. I want to bring up points in the paint allowed. Let's see, where is Washington at this point in the season? Washington allowing 50.8 points in the paint per game. That is the fourth worst in the league, fourth most allowed in the league. And Gilgeous-Alexander just loves to be in the paint. And that's when like so many of his scoring outbursts come, is when the matchup is great in the paint. Let me bring up the points in the paint per game leaders on the season. Of course, Giannis leading the way, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is sixth in the NBA at 13.2 points in the paint per game. So really, really good matchup for him. I am not at all opposed to looking at either his first quarter or first half scoring numbers. Do we have a first half for him? It doesn't look like we do. Maybe they will add that, but regardless, I think you can go to the 9.5 first quarter points. Let's bring up their rotations from the last few games. And remember, we kind of expected in the last few that coming off that, 5 games in 8 nights because of the cup, that they would be a little bit more conservative with the rotations. Gilgeous-Alexander still played all 12 first quarter minutes last game against Miami. So I think we will continue to see that. He played all 12 third quarter minutes in that game as well. Like, this is just what they do. This is the way that they have rotated pretty much all season. They like giving Shai the entire first quarter. Also had 13 points the game prior in 12 minutes. He comes out aggressive, comes out attacking the paint, and he plays 12 minutes every single time, seemingly. So if we want to avoid the potential blowout risk, we can go to, I would probably move this up to 10.5. Although if we already have the Steph 1.24x, I don't have an issue just taking the 0.92x on 9.5. But I also don't have any issue just taking the 30.5 points for Shai in this fantastic matchup against Washington. We will also talk more about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander once we get to the DFS portion of the show, because a lot of GPP scores from that game really popping. And so there's like a very specific way, I think, that we play that game or fade that game, which is also kind of a good point here. Like if you are worried about the blowout potential and therefore you don't want to use Jalen Williams or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or any of the Washington Wizards over on DraftKings, you can say, all right, I'm not going to that game. I'm fading that game in DFS, but I am still concerned that I'm going to get burned by that. And so one way you can quote unquote hedge in a really sharp way, which isn't actually hedging, it just kind of feels that way emotionally, is by taking the over on Shai's overall points. So I do kind of like that thought. And actually, I also want to bring up some other stuff in this Indiana and Golden State game from a prop side where maybe we get some added correlation. You can see, I'll bring up the tool here, and we have some strong edges on the Indiana side. So best edge of the day from this game, of course, is the Steph Curry one. And actually, I will go ahead and move this to 6.5. Just a reminder, you can always do this whenever you'd like. And you can see we still have the over 6.5 at 60%. And you can kind of turn this into a game stack with Nembhard points, with Mathurin rebounds. That's a really high number for Mathurin rebounds. I kind of want to look into that. We also have an edge on the over for Mathurin points. So maybe you do a points plus rebounds on Mathurin. Let's dive a little further into that. Let's see what we've got for Mathurin in the last few games. So playing 30, 37, 28, 37, 34, 34, 32, 37 minutes of late. So really nice roll. The rebounds have been kind of up and down, 8, 2, 6, 7, 3, 6, which, by the way, like is you guys have probably picked up on it. I like the blocks and steals picks. I like the turnover picks more typically than points or rebounds. And the main reason for that is just variance. Like I mentioned this the other day with Zach, where I might be even more confident that a line is incorrect on points or rebounds than on stocks, and still have more interest in the stocks because I think there's less variance around that number. At times, it's not always true, but at times it's true, and it seems to be true here with Mathurin. Like we've seen games Mathurin has gotten 11 rebounds, 12, 12, 10, 9, 9, but then he also has games 2, 3, 4, 3, 0. So you're getting a ton of variation around the number. So even if we can confidently say this number is well below his projection, doesn't necessarily mean it meets the threshold of that. Like we're always trying to go for plays that are 60% likely if they are, even money return. So Mathurin does average 6.2 rebounds per 32.8 minutes. So that aspect of it is very strong. We know that he's a good scorer. And again, like I do think this is a pretty solid matchup. Let's see. Where are they now in opponent rebounds per game? This Golden State team, 27th. So they have allowed the fourth most opponent rebounds per game, which also really fits this Mathurin play. So I think we can build some really like nice correlated stuff within this game if we would like. In fact, let's see what that correlation looks like. If I added Mathurin rebounds here, and just for the heck of it, let's see what would happen if I also added, what was the one? Nebahard points. Let's see what we're getting correlation-wise. So plus 1.6% for this whole thing. All three plays are absolutely loved here by the tool. So definitely have interest here. Steph Curry, more than 6.5 assists. Benedict Mathurin, more than 5.5 rebounds, and Andrew Nebahard, more than 9.5 points. That is definitely in consideration for a 3-pick play. And let's see, do we now have any stock stuff? Finally, we do. So let's take a quick look at the stocks and see what we got here. Immediately, I'm going to go Wembanyama over 4.5 stocks at 1.08x. We mentioned this the other day. It's like every single time Wemby is at 4.5, I'm going to have interest. He's coming off a 10-block game. The game prior, he had 6 stocks. The game prior, he had 7 stocks. The guy is a machine in the stocks department. Now, that has come against 3 really, really good stock matchup teams, Portland, Atlanta, and Minnesota. Philly not quite at that level in terms of the matchup, but I mean, this guy is averaging how many stocks now per game? 4.9. So averaging 4.9 on an absolute tear in the stocks department right now. It's not a bad matchup by any means in the stocks department, and we're getting 1.08x. So I definitely think this Wemby over 4.5 stocks is also a play. Let me go ahead and just throw in the Mathurin picks. Let me make sure that they are the same here as they are over on prize picks, and actually they are not. So Mathurin 5.5 is now at 0.92x here on Underdog. Now at the projection that we have, that would still be solid, right? Like 0.92x at 66.1% is still good. But what we could do there is, just like we did with Steph's assists, we can move this up to 7.5, go over that at 1.64x. Let's see what that says over on the tool. If we move this to 7.5, we've got it projected for 7.34. So this is going to be less than 50%, down to 42.2%. I think that's still good. At 40%, I believe, would be 1.5x. So slightly more than 40%, and we are getting better than 1.5x at 1.64x. So I think that's still good, but I don't love it as much as I would have loved just a regular over 5.5 at the number, which means maybe we do switch from rebounds to points plus rebounds at 20.5. We have Mathurin projected. Let's see. We've got him at 7.3 rebounds and 16.4 points. So that is 24 points plus rebounds. That's a lot better than 20 and a half. So I'll go ahead and throw in Mathurin over 20 and a half points plus rebounds as the play here. And the last one was Nebhard points, and that's 9.5. So I believe that is exactly what we had. Yes, it is. I do want to see, where do we have Nebhard? We have him projected for 3.3 rebounds compared to his 2.5 rebound number. That's pretty solid as well. Do we not have anything for Nebhard assists here? Okay, we don't. Let's see. Do they have a points plus or rebounds plus assists? They do at 6.5, but it's only 0.89x and no ability to ladder that. So, actually, I would want points plus assists is what I was thinking about. So 14.5 points plus assists. Let's take a look at where we have what we have for his actual projections. You can find this on the ownership page. You can always scroll all the way to the right. You can also just find this on the NBA projections page, which we have brought up a couple times previously. But let's take a look. Nebhard, we've got projected for 5.22 assists and 13.04 points. So that is 18.26 points plus assists versus 14.5 as his number. So that's what I'm going to take. And the reason I wanted points plus assists is because I think that's going to correlate better with Mathurin's points plus rebounds, where, if we're getting an assist from Nebhard to a Mathurin 3, like that's going to help us a ton. So we can't test the correlation of this in the Pick'em tool, but sometimes we just know, right? It's very intuitive that this is going to be positively correlated. So 4 really strong picks here, I actually think, and you can make this. You can make this a 3-pick play if you'd like. I'd probably maybe run this once with. Certainly, I could run this with just the game stack and not include Wembanyama. Maybe you then throw in Wembanyama if we find some NFL picks later, or if we find some other stocks picks here quickly to turn it into a 6-pick play. But I feel pretty good now about what we have so far on this slate. Let's see if we have anything else in the stocks department. Really good matchup in the stocks department for OG Anunoby over 2.5. He had been on a tear in the stocks department. Let's see, has he continued to do so? Remember, he had a stretch where he went, starting in December, 7 stocks, 2, 6, 6, 5, 4, but then 1, 3, and 3 in the last 2 games. The last time they played Toronto, he played 41 minutes and had 5 stocks. So I don't totally understand why we're getting a boost on this one at just 2.5. So I'm going to throw Anunoby over 2.5 stocks in there as well. Remember, that is now, let's see. We've got, I just lost my place. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the last 9 games he has been over this number. And some of those games, it's been way over. So I think this is pretty strong here. I still wish they would give us some ladder opportunities in the stocks department, but they do not. So that's now 5 picks already. Jalen Johnson, 2.5 at 1.17 seems fairly good as well. Also a good matchup for him. Let's see. Ooh, Edey in a good matchup with LAC. What have his minutes been like? Obviously, everyone has seen the clip of him kind of bullying Draymond Green down low the other night, playing 24, 24, and 27 minutes in the last 3, but only 2, 2, and 1 stocks in those games, despite the fact that he's averaging 1.8 in 20.9 minutes. So actually, his stocks have kind of fallen off compared to early on in the season when he was blocking shots at a crazy per minute rate. That actually has come down. So let's see, does Edey have anything in just the blocks department? Maybe we'd be more interested there. Over 1.5 at 1.39. I don't think I like that, but it's better than the 2.5 at 1.2x. Let's see. It's still crazy to me to see Jaren Jackson Jr. posted at 2.5 instead of 3.5, but the stocks just have been a little bit down for him this season. So I don't think I have anything else that I truly, truly love here. No Dyson Daniels. They're keeping that away from us. How's Paul George been in the stocks department? Certainly has been good in the shooting percentage department. I can tell you that much. He's been pretty solid. Only had one in the big giant loss to Cleveland the other night, but only played 27 minutes. Prior to that, 39 minutes and 40 minutes in the 2 games against Charlotte. Had 4 and 3 stocks in that game, 4 in the game prior against Indiana in 35 minutes. So love the minutes. And historically, like, he is a very good stocks guy, averaging 2.4 in 31.7 minutes so far this season. So if we think he's playing something like 37, that's probably going to go to 2.7, 2.8 as an expectation. Let's see, where do we have Paul George in the stocks department today? We've got him at 0.47 blocks and 1.74 steals, so not quite good enough to like his stocks. Kind of surprising to see him that far down, but makes some sense. We have Wemby, by the way, projected at like 5.2 stocks, so you can kind of see the difference there. That is a really, really good projection for what we're getting. Let's see, where do we have Anunoby as well? We've got Anunoby at 2.66, so 2.66, not quite as much of an edge as we're getting with Wembanyama, but we're still getting 1.09x, and I think it's a better matchup for Anunoby maybe than our model is suggesting. So I like that spot one, or this one for Anunoby as well. So we've got 5. I don't know if we're going to find a 6th here while we are live. If you guys in the chat see anything that you like, let me know. We can test out anything, see what the model is showing, and anything that you guys are looking at. There are some others. We could go to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as well if we wanted for either of those. Let's see. Let's take a quick glance at the NFL side to see if there's anything there that I really like so far. When I looked this morning, the answer was no. This is just a massive rushing yardage total for Josh Jacobs at 89.5 rushing yards. Actually, the first thought that I had was, you know what? If this is a blowout, we will see more carries for. We finally do. Emmanuel Wilson, 13.5 rushing yards. Let's see. That might be the play. Emmanuel Wilson, last game had 3 for 9 in a 30-13 victory. The last time Green Bay won in a big blowout, remember that game with Seattle, like they ended up winning 30-13, but it was always a closer game than that final score suggested. The last time they had a blowout win was their 30-10 victory against the 49ers 4 weeks ago. And in that game, we saw Josh Jacobs go for 26 for 106. We saw Emmanuel Wilson, 9 carries, 41 yards. So they really used Wilson in that game, both to spell Jacobs, but then also just to kind of ice the clock. Chris Brooks also had 4 carries for 11 yards in that game. So I think given my expectation of a blowout, this 13.5 over for Emmanuel Wilson is really, really strong. And that gives us a great 6-pick play. I will probably then run a 3-pick play that is just Steph, Mathurin, and Nebhard. I will probably also run a 3-pick play that is Steph, Wilson, and Wembanyama. I'm not going to finalize any of that just yet. I will post that in the Pick'ems channel of the Discord once I finalize the plays, but I'm liking this quite a bit. So I think that'll do it for the Pick'em stuff. And let's jump now to the GPP scores and the DFS slate. You can see Ryan Rollins projecting extremely well, and with this massive GPP score, even though he's at 52% projected ownership. Now, one thing I will point to is we haven't projected at over a fantasy point per minute right now. This was before I went live. And right before I went live, I did go adjust his rates down. In fact, on the back end, even though it's not posted yet, I can see what his projection has updated to. So let me do that real quick, and I will be able to even say what his new GPP score will be with this update. So let's see, Ryan Rollins, where are you now? Looking for Milwaukee. There we go. Come on. It's going very, very slow. New GPP score is negative 15.3. So maybe I overdid it. Now he's down to 23.86 projected fantasy points in 30 minutes. I kind of think that that's probably actually a good projection. So we'll see what his ownership does throughout the day, but I like that projection more than 32, given the expectation that Giannis will be back. So ignore that at the top, and that leaves us with the best GPP scores, largely coming both from high-priced players and potentially then from this this Oklahoma City game. Sorry, everything is going slow. I have way too many tabs open. I think that's the problem here. But regardless, let's take a look here. If we want Oklahoma City, these guys who are near the top, 5.7 GPP score for Jalen Williams, 5.4 for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Not only is that costly, but also note what that is kind of saying. You're saying that if these guys outperform their expectations, which means that they have access to these really big ceilings, over 60 for Jalen Williams, over 70 for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If they're outperforming the expectations to get to their ceilings, what also has to happen from Washington so that these guys are sitting the entire fourth quarter? It means Washington has to outperform their projections as well. So if you want these Oklahoma City guys, I recommend taking a look at some of these Washington guys. I need to close out some of these tabs so that this isn't going so slowly for me. Let's see here. I've got a million different tabs open, so this might take a second. But let's see, where do we have some of these Washington guys? Here we go. So slightly positive GPP score on Jordan Poole. And this is like, this is kind of my favorite sort of thing to talk through in DFS, because why are these guys underowned, which the GPP scores are telling us? First of all, like, they're under 1%. But even at a bad value, like we know that there's the possibility that Jordan Poole just gets hot from the floor and reaches his ceiling of 47. But the thing I love about this is when that happens for Jordan Poole, it is so incredibly helpful for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams that I love that correlation. So much of the time when we're talking NBA DFS, we don't have that strong of correlation, right? Like even in the 3-pick plays that we're building earlier, that's a pure game stack, getting 1.6 percentage points of correlation there. Where we get more extreme correlation in outcomes, and particularly in ceiling outcomes, is when something is absolutely necessary. Like it's necessary for Washington to stay in this game for Oklahoma City guys to actually reach their ceiling projections. So when we get these extreme situations, I really do like to take advantage, even though if you're playing a $7,500 Jordan Poole, you're going to feel like absolute crap doing so. But when it hits, it's going to hit in such a brilliant way. I will say, like, I'm not necessarily suggesting at this point in the day that you definitely do that, because we do have to take note of who else is in that price range. If there are too many guys in that price range projecting really well, let's do this. Let's sort by value instead. But notice, like, we have Tyler Hero projecting fairly well at 40.5, but like that's less than 5 points ahead of Jordan Poole. So there's nobody in this price range that is truly projecting insanely well, where we need to worry about kind of like on the NFL slate yesterday, right? Like if you were pivoting off of Jahmyr Gibbs or James Conner to someone contrarian, you did benefit if you had a Jonathan Taylor who had that complete mega ceiling game. But there were also guys that you could have pivoted to who did well, got you like 22 points, 24 points. Bijan Robinson's a good example of that. Bijan had a good game, nearly 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. But if you pivoted off Gibbs or Connor to Bijan Robinson, that actually hurt you, because not only was Bijan more expensive, but he also didn't get to their point total. So that's something I want to be wary of with the idea to play Jordan Poole in a game stack here. But this is actually a slate at the moment where I'm not super afraid of the guys that I'd be pivoting away from in Poole's price range, which makes it more viable. We also can see like a slew of Utah players really popping in the value projections. I think we're gonna have to take a look at Shvi's projection, but Kessler Sexton, Markkanen, Clarkson. If we're bringing somebody down, someone else is going up, right? So we can say with certainty at this point in the day that regardless of what changes we make to projections as we lead up to lock, some of these Utah guys are going to be near the top in the value projection. I would say reason being for this, it seems to me like the pricing algorithm has overcorrected for the matchup. Yes, Cleveland is a very bad matchup, but if that's already priced in, and it's also being doubled down on by the field in terms of ownership, which it seems to be. Like, look how low some of these ownerships are. That's something we want to take advantage of. If it's already priced in and ownership is now double counting the bad matchup, then the fact that it's a bad matchup is actually a reason to play the guy. Kind of a good time, by the way, to mention, like, one of the things that Zach and I have been discussing lately is we want to add more of the why behind a lot of these GPP scores. Now, we can do our best, like here on the show, to do that here at noon, but of course the GPP scores are going to change a lot. Anytime that you guys have questions on a guy's projection, why is he projected this high? Why is the GPP score this high? Like, we can say, the GPP score is this high because he's projected well for his ownership, but that doesn't necessarily give you the why behind the play. You might want to know the why behind the projection. Why do we have him projected at 47 when the rest of the industry hasn't projected at 42, 43, something like that? Ask us. We love those kinds of questions. So hit myself up, hit Zach up in the chat. We will always be happy to answer that kind of question. More often than not, my answer on guys like that is going to be game environment. The strength of our NBA model is on the team level. Frank has created an absolutely incredible NBA betting model. You can see that every single day based on the success of the model and on the CLV that the model gets every single day on totals, especially. Like, he's so damn good at projecting pace and kind of understanding the trends around the league, things of that nature, which means that typically we are more accurate in our estimate of the game environment than the market is. And so most of the time that we have an edge on projection, particularly if you're seeing that throughout an entire team, the why behind it has to do with the game environment as a whole, the pace or the trending defense, things of that nature. But just because that's the typical answer doesn't mean that's always going to be the answer. So reminder, you guys can always ask away on that front. I will also note, once again, seeing a massive projection on Giannis, including a ceiling projection near 80 points. So even though he is going to be popular and has a chance to get a lot more popular, you can still see he's got like a 39% chance of smashing, which is going to be really, really good on this slate. Reminder, this Ryan Rollins smash percentage will go down and the fail percentage will go up once I'm able to load in the updated projections, which I will do as soon as I conclude the stream. I think that will do it here. Not really anything else that I notice. Let's see if there's anything from a positional standpoint. We do have a lot of point guards, it looks like, at the top of the GPP scores today. LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards. Of course, he has shooting guard eligibility as well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Ryan Rollins. Considering the fact that Ryan Rollins now has a negative GPP score and we're projecting him to be so popular, and we're seeing a lot of point guards with great GPP scores, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I just mentioned, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball as well. You can also find Jalen Brunson here, Colin Sexton. My early lean on the slate is pay up at point guard, pay down elsewhere, just because that's now, it gives you multiple outs, right? It means that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and LaMelo Ball could win you the slate by outperforming Giannis Antetokounmpo or any other pay-up options that other people are using instead. Or they could win you the slate because even though Shai gets 65 to Giannis' 70 and LaMelo gets 60 to Towns 65, maybe you hit on the value plays, whereas Rollins fails. And if Rollins only gets 15 and you're getting 25 from your value play that you pivoted to instead, your combination is now better than everybody else's at much, much, much lower ownership. So that's my lean of how to attack the slate, but we will see what the slate looks like as we get closer and closer to lock. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Catch us at 5:30 Eastern, myself and Prop God. More picks coming your way, especially somehow, some way, we're going to find some picks from this NFL game. I like the Emmanuel Wilson one, but we will see what else we can find. We will catch you next time.